All right, good evening. I'd respectfully ask for people to take their seats and come to order. Thank you all for being here for our annual meeting of Temple Jeremiah. My name is Scott Levin, and I have the privilege of serving as president of this congregation for about 48 more minutes. But I sincerely appreciate you carving out some of your time this evening to come hear about the state of the congregation and be witness to several awards being presented, and also the presentation of the budget and our slate of officers for this next fiscal year. So before we get on with the business of the meeting, Rabbi Cohen, would you please deliver the Devar Torah? This is my favorite part. It's the only time I get to use it. Okay, the meeting is called to order. Yeah.
That's kind of amazing. It is wonderful to be here tonight and to celebrate this annual meeting of our congregation. And it is wonderful to have members of our board of directors, members of our community, and I think all of our emeriti. Rabbi Schreibman is here with his wife Patty, and Fern Kamen is here, our executive director, emerita, and Ann Litsky, our director of congregational learning, emerita, and Cantor Amy Zussman, Cantor emerita, with David, and it's just as well as having our current group with Cantor Friedman and Matt Rissian and Rabbi Heaps in the corner, in her happy place with the technology. This is so good. And Danny Glassman is right here. There we go. And we have, I think the gang's all, I didn't leave anybody out. You know, when you start naming names without a list in front of you, it's a big risk. So I invite you to join with me in the blessing for study. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So we are about to, on Thursday evening, begin our observance, our celebration of the festival of Shavuot. And I thought this would be a great launching point for us. And on the first slide, you'll see the text from Exodus 19 that describes part of the preparation of the Israelites to receiving Torah. Shavuot, of course, is the festival where we celebrate the giving and the receiving of Torah at Mount Sinai. And in chapter 19, we hear about some of the preparations. In Hebrew, it reads, B'chodesh hashlishi letzeit b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim, bayom hazeh ba'u midbar Sinai, vayis'u mirefidim v'yavu midbar Sinai, v'yachanu b'midbar. Vayichan sham Yisrael neged hahar. So the English is, on the third new moon after the Israelites had gone forth from the land of Egypt, on that very day, they entered the wilderness of Sinai. Having journeyed from Rephidim, they entered the wilderness of Sinai and camped in the wilderness. Israel encamped there in front of the mountain. So in the English, there isn't much to note, but you'll see in the Hebrew, bolded, the last words of it are Vayichan Sham Yisrael Neged Hahar. And what was interesting and noteworthy to our sages of blessed memory, that we move from a plural description of the community made up of individuals to the singular Vayichan Sham Yisrael as a singular identification of the community of Israel. And then in the second slide, you'll see the commentary from the Mechilta de Rabbi Yishmael on this idea, focusing on Vayichan Sham Yisrael. And Israel encamped there. Elsewhere is written, and they journeyed, and they encamped. They journeyed in quarrel and encamped in quarrel, because it's talking about them as a group, they, the third person plural. Here, they were of one heart, wherefore it is written, and it, Vayichan, in the singular, that they encamped there, that Israel encamped there in the singular. God said to them, you will be there for a relatively long time. And indeed, we find that they were there for 12 months, less 10 days, opposite the mountain, to the east of the mountain, that in Hebrew is Neged Hahar. And what is, again, very powerful about this is the idea of how they presented themselves, how they were able to come together, a group of individuals to come together as one, united in purpose, united in their anticipation of receiving Torah as a community, as a whole, with a sense of well-being. Rashi, in the next slide, he emphasizes this as one person with one mind. But all their other encampments were made in a murmuring spirit and a spirit of dissension. And we'll read more about that. We read more about that in the book of Numbers, where there was quite a rebellious nature to the Israelite camp. But at this moment, they were able to come together. And I wanted to bring this forward because with an annual meeting, we have an opportunity to gather together as one and to talk about the congregation, to think about the congregation, and to celebrate the congregation. There are times, perhaps, when there are disagreements and some murmurings and people not necessarily agreeing with a particular opinion or a particular program or a particular idea. And yet there are these wonderful opportunities that we have in celebrating festivals and in celebrating what we have accomplished this year and looking ahead to the next year. We have an opportunity to honor our young people, to honor significant moments in our leadership team of the congregation, and we do this as one. May we continue to see ourselves as a community and individuals united in a singular purpose, and that is of creating a community, a Jewish community of meaningful connection. Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi. The next order of business is to approve the April minutes of the Board of Directors, and for this I would ask for board members only to vote for the passing of the April minutes. If I can hear a motion. Is there a second? All in favor, please say aye. Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? The minutes pass. Do you see how exciting this is? So I have the privilege of speaking a little bit about the state of the congregation, and as history and tradition would have it, as the outgoing president of the synagogue, a few moments to reflect on the last 3 years. And I am very proud to say that the state of the congregation remains strong. You will hear from our illustrious treasurer, Sue Weitzman, a balanced budget this evening. And our membership has held very solid through the entire pandemic, which is an incredible achievement. This journey for me began probably about 15 years ago. We were fairly new members and went to a family camp up at Azrui and had the opportunity to connect with Dr. Ann Litsky and some members of her family. And I think it might have been Ann who kind of fed my name along at one point or another and said, maybe this person would be okay for the board, maybe not. That made its way to Julie, I believe. Julie was the first president that I got to sit on the board with. Julie was incredible. Here seemingly 24/7, 365. And then after being on the board for a few years, was asked to step up to the executive committee. And then maybe a couple of years after that, I got a call from Joel Afric that asked me whether I would like to sit on what was known as the compensation committee, which was essentially the track to become the executive vice president. He didn't tell me that at that initial call. So I really do want to thank Ann and Julie and Joel for recognizing and asking me to serve. I've always viewed it as an enormous privilege to be asked and to be recognized, and it has been extremely fulfilling. I did say yes, really because it's all about relationships for me. I know we've talked about the capital campaign quite a bit, but for me it was always a connection campaign. And I know that is a very, very important word in our mission and vision goals, but that is what it was about. And what an incredible 3 years it has been. Starting in June of 2020, in the middle of the first wave, all holed up in our homes, we immediately started thinking about High Holy Days and created a multi-access format and a whole new format for the High Holidays, and a new way of the board reaching out to the congregation with those High Holiday book deliveries, and that tradition has continued every year since. The person who I mentioned first, Dr. Litsky, in that first year said, "You know, Scott, after 40 years, I think I'm gonna hang up my cleats." And I said, "What do you mean?" And we moved through that with grace, and I remember recognizing you and having the celebration in the tent, kind of in the middle of the pandemic, and bringing on our wonderful Matt Rissian, who has taken the mantle with grace and humility as well, and has done an amazing job. We did complete the capital campaign, started when I was EVP under the leadership of Barb and her co-chairs, David Golder and Ken Lorch, and brought that to completion along with Leslie Landman, our Director of Philanthropy, and had a wonderful celebration of an amazingly successful capital campaign in the middle of a pandemic, or at any time for that matter. We had the opportunity to extend Rabbi Heap's commitment to our congregation and even think about the future of our congregation in very progressive and visionary ways. We had the opportunity to extend Cantor Friedman to kind of keep the whole band together through the whole pandemic, which was no small feat. Some of these things happen in public and at board meetings, and a lot of being the president, and I'm sure other presidents will say the same thing, is actually quite private. Meeting with congregants, meeting with staff, and really getting to know the clergy really well and through some really challenging times. And that is an incredible privilege that if anyone has the chance, I don't know how you could say no to it. That private connection with congregants, with staff, with clergy, meeting with Rabbi Cohen on Tuesday mornings for probably 150 Tuesdays or something, is something that I will take with me forever. During the High Holidays, I spoke about 3 different themes, and I just wanted to revisit those very briefly. The first was about stories. Tell us your story. And we did interview with the task force 18 exceptionally interesting congregants, and that series is actually still unfolding on the Friday evening, the Thursday evening weekly newsletter. So continue to look for those. It's always been about the stories for me. The second year was about trauma-based growth, kind of the middle of the pandemic, starting to maybe come through the phases, and just how we as a people, as a community, or as an individual can somehow move through trauma and grow from it is extremely difficult. And to stand here tonight and to see everyone here unmasked without plexiglass, it's quite an achievement. And then the last year, just a few months ago, was all about faith. And have a little faith was the theme. And I emphasize that the title of Mitch Albom's book, Have a Little Faith, is all in lowercase letters because I say that and ask everyone here to have a little faith with a lot of humility. They're all small letters, but we have to have that faith to take us day to day. I would be remiss if I did not thank the incredible board of directors that I had the privilege of working with over the last 3 years, and the executive committee as a subgroup of that board, that you cannot imagine the attendance that we have at every board meeting, every executive committee meeting. They're almost to a person, everyone is there, and if someone's not there, they send an email, you know, I'm out of town, I can't make it, please let me know. That is not the norm. So I do want to sincerely thank every single board member and executive committee member that is here tonight for your service over the last 3 years. The work that you did, the trust that you placed in myself, our treasurer, our executive vice president, is not overlooked. And it truly has been a privilege. I also would be remiss if I didn't thank my wife, Amy. We'll be celebrating 30 years in just a week or so. And an incredible support through all of this, as she always is. And as Rabbi Cohen said, we look ahead to a really exciting slate. I am thrilled to have been able to work with Steve Kleinman as my executive vice president. Brilliant, concise, able to take extremely complex ideas and boil them down into a very digestible nugget that you can process. And he is going to be an exceptional president. And his executive vice president is slated to be Avi Greenfield, and Avi is also very much about relationships and making connections. And Avi and Steve are going to be an amazing pair. So with that, again, the state of our congregation is strong, and I thank you again for being here this evening. Sue, would you come up and present the budget?
Good evening, everyone, and my name is Sue Weitzman. I'm a representative of the Budget Committee and also the current treasurer of Temple Jeremiah. And I am very pleased to present a balanced fiscal year 24 budget to the members of Temple Jeremiah and the board. Wanted to highlight a few things, and I'm going to try to highlight and be brief, but I first really did want to say to Scott that, gotcha. No, you know, I think back when you said that you started your presidency at the beginning of the pandemic, and, you know, if there was ever a man, a person for these last 3 years, I really think it was you. And I think the Temple owes a lot to Scott, and you did a great job just leading us through this with your knowledge and your intellect, and we all thank you for it. So thank you. All right, back to the budget. You can see I would probably rather talk about anything else since this is the third time I am going through it, but I really enjoy working on it. There are members in the Budget Committee that I think they've been on it for 3 decades. And I think that's a great testament to the community of the Temple and also how important we feel this process is. So again, as in the past, a lot of hours and work went into the budget process, and I want to personally thank every staff member, every clergy, and every budget committee member who really set aside a lot of time and energy to work through the numbers and make the budget balance. As you may remember, for the past 3 years, the Temple's finances were aided by receiving approximately $1 million of government pandemic funding through the PPP loans and the employee retention credits. You know, this coming year, we won't have any of those such programs, and we worked really hard to, to get our income and expenses in line. It's not a surprise that many of our expenses are fixed, and some have had to increase this year due to the inflation and tight labor market that we are all very familiar with in our own everyday living. To help balance this year's fiscal budget, we used a small piece of the clergy's discretionary funds, as well as the income from the temple's endowment and building fund to ensure a balanced budget. And we thank clergy for their contribution as well. As in the past years, the committee will continue to evaluate the budget in the fall and as additional information becomes available via membership and school enrollment. So I'm going to briefly give a overview of the income and expense side. We have I can't see the slides, okay. Income side of the budget, as you can see, is broken down into member commitment, which is 67% of the operating income, and we are budgeting an increase in membership commitment via small increases to our member community fee, and please note that 50% of the membership pays the full member commitment, which in and of itself makes budgeting process very difficult, but we were able to work through that. We are also budgeting an increase of 15 net new households joining the temple this year, and that's very exciting. You may remember that new members receive a discounted member commitment fee in their first and second years. Last year, we also saw several new members join as empty nesters and seniors looking for connection spiritually and personally, and we're grateful for that. JQuest school income. While JQuest rebounded this past year, it is still below pre-pandemic levels, but we are expecting the number of enrolled students to be just about the same, maybe a slight increase from this past year. Due to increases in teacher and school building expenses, fees will be increased just a little bit, we'd say minimally, within the higher increase coming from the 6th grade Hebrew programming. Facility income. We are budgeting an increase of $44,000 in facility income for the fiscal year. We continue to rent our facility to Bridge in various support groups, and this summer we're pleased to announce a new income source will come from Pedalheads Bike Camp, which we hope will continue for many more summers as well. Facility income, we should note, also includes the security fee that we collect from each household. We are proposing to increase the security fee by $50 to $150 per household member, and this, obviously, the security fee income will help offset the rising cost of the security personnel that you see every time you enter the building. Fundraising and development is also a part of the income piece of our budget. We are budgeting an increase in fundraising development due to the anticipated member increases for annual gift giving, purchases of memorial plaques, and the continued success of High Holy Day giving. This dovetails with the temple's culture of generosity, which will be driven by a communication and development plan that will be coming to fruition throughout the next fiscal year. So please be on the watch for that. Programming income. Bar and bat mitzvah fees are budgeted to increase just a bit more for the students in the program to just ensure that the temple covers tutor salaries and our upgraded audio-visual expenses. Miscellaneous income this year, for the first time since we began actively investing the temple's restricted funds, we have had to use the income, which is dividend and interest, generated from the prior year from the temple endowment and the building endowment to bridge the budget's income and expenses. And again, as I said, in addition, certain line item expenses in the operating budget are covered by other temple funds namely the Clergy Discretionary Music Fund and Education Fund. Now a quick summary of the budget, of the expense side of the budget. As you can see, the operating expense PowerPoint slide, the expense components are comprised of 5 categories: building, administrative, religious service, school, and programming. And then if you could show the next slide, which actually breaks out. This is the slide that shows that, as you can see, human resources of the temple comprises 80% of the temple's operating expense. And then when you add in service agreements, which is pretty non-negotiable, which keeps the building operating and functioning in a clean and safe manner, and utilities, again, pretty key to running the temple, you have 90% of the temple's operating expenses right there. So when we say we try to run a tight ship, clergy, executive director, they really do. Under administration, salary and associated FICA expenses are budgeted to increase 3% for staff raises this coming year. And one important nice note is that we did replace our online bookkeeping service, which we went to during pandemic, with a talented and in-person bookkeeper, Sean Amons, which I think many of you have met. And these expense items offset each other, but we feel the enhanced, personable member experience of having a bookkeeper in the office, able to talk to members and help. Our executive director was crucial to the membership and the temple. The miscellaneous category increased this year because of our new contract with Live Control, who will be broadcasting temple services. The cost is partially covered by the fees received through the B'nai Mitzvah program and is largely offset by a decrease in the High Holy Day sound, tech, and video expenses. So the overall budget for programming in the fiscal year is increased, but the main changes that led to that approximately $16,000 increase that we're very excited about is that we are now budgeting for a full-time young family engagement director to replace our current youth and family engagement director. The current position was split between overseeing various youth programming and teaching for J-Quest on Sundays. The new role will focus specifically on our younger youth programming and building connection with parents of school-age children. And we all know how important that is. The building operating budget is set to increase by $42,000 in the next year, which basically reflects an increase in operating costs comprised of a 3% salary staff increase, an increase in Cook County minimum wage law, health insurance premiums, 403B contributions. All key important people to retaining the best people we can to serve and be with our temple community. And as expected, higher energy prices also play a contributing factor in higher building expenses in comparison to last year. So again, we were very pleased and we worked really, really hard, and you could tell we worked hard on the expense side to present a balanced budget to the temple's congregation and to the board of directors. And in doing so, as a member of the budget committee, I respectfully submit a balanced budget to the congregation for the fiscal year. And any questions? Otherwise, we need a vote.
Are there any questions for Sue?
Great. That's what we were hoping for.
So our treasurer has put a motion before the congregation. Is there a second? Thank you. All in favor of approving the budget as presented, please say aye. Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Unanimous.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. To say that there is a lot of work that goes into the budget is an understatement. And our budget committee works really hard and has some really talented people on it. So that is wonderful. I had my agenda here, and it seems to have, yes. So it is my privilege to have Barb Miller, who recorded a video to present the slate of officers.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Barbara Miller, and I serve as your immediate past president and co-chair of the nominating committee. It is with pleasure that the nominating committee submits the board slate for 2023-2024 for your consideration. I want to thank everyone on the nominating committee and my co-chair, Doug Schabelman, for all the hard work to put together this slate. I would also like to take a moment to welcome our new board members, Brad Gordon, Lisa Brenner, and Phyllis Mitson. I would also like to thank the board members who are finishing their board service, Christine Kaufman, Paul Chaikin, Jill Ozer, Randy Gurian, and Scott Mandel. To the nominating committee, to those new board members, and to our retiring board members, thank you for saying yes.
And Barb didn't mention that she is also rotating off the board after a long and illustrious service term. And I would also like, Aileen, where is Aileen? Do you have the executive committee?
I don't want to trust my memory. Thank you, Scott.
I think it's this one, nominated for an additional term.
Okay, nominated for an additional term on the executive committee, we have, additional term for the board of directors.
Yes.
We have Karen Brown, Gary Cash, Alyssa Rogers, and Babette Sanders. And for the officers, for our congregation, President Steve Kleinman, Executive Vice President Avi Greenfield, Vice Presidents John Fellman, Brian Rubin, Tanya Silverstein, Jerry Tater, our treasurer Sue Weitzman, and I will continue as the recording secretary. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So if I can jump in for just a moment.
Yes.
With this transition, of course, Scott, you are rotating off as president. I'd like to invite Steve, if you'll come forward, Danny, if you'll come forward as well. We didn't want to let this pass without an acknowledgement. And so, in thinking, you guys will hold this, to acknowledge this, I just want you to look. Phyllis is responsible for the wrapping job. I want to give credit where credit is due. For the wrapping, this is not something that any of us could have done. So thank you, Phyllis. And so we invite you to open the gift to think of what can we give to someone who has served with such distinction through such a very, as one might say, very interesting times in the life of our congregation and indeed in the world. And what you have is a framed, sorry for the sparkles, that's and okay. Is it's the glitter, is a framed paper cut that includes not only your name, but it is the physician's prayer that was composed by Moses Maimonides and was placed on his wall as a physician. And so we thought this would be a wonderful gift, a meaningful way to acknowledge 3 years of service.
It is extremely glittery.
Fern, did your blood pressure go up with the glitter? I remember there were three things: no glitter, no red Jell-O, and no popcorn.
All right, my friends. We now have the privilege of recognizing some wonderful, wonderful community members. And the first of whom I'd like to invite up is our Executive Director, Danny Glassman. Danny is celebrating 10 years as our Executive Director. Absolutely unbelievable member of our community, says yes, before Barb said to say yes, to everything, is always willing to sit down with you in his office, talk in the hallway, meet you for coffee. One thing that I implemented as president was the president would always have coffee with Rabbi Cohen or breakfast on Tuesday mornings, and once a month we started doing a three-legged stool meeting. And the three of us would get together and just talk about things. And I think it was just so valuable for the three of us to be sitting down together and talking. And I am not going to talk much more about this because I want Fern to come up and do the real presentation.
Me? No, I'm not saying anything. I said yes already.
Before I begin to tell you wonderful things about Danny, who is truly my friend, good friend, Rabbi Cohn started this meeting by acknowledging my friends, Rabbi Schreibman, Cantor Zussman, Dr. Ann Litsky, and myself. I want you to know that there is no other congregation that I know of in the United States, maybe you know of one, where past and present work together. This congregation, I am so proud to be here. This congregation is so unique and so wonderful, and it's a tribute to everybody, the staff, and everybody who's sitting here tonight. It is truly terrific. So congratulations, all of you. But tonight, I am here to help celebrate Danny's 10th anniversary. As a past two-term president of NADA, which is the National Association of Temple Administrators, I feel that I'm wearing two hats. The first as the longtime representative, but even more importantly, tonight I represent Temple Jeremiah and honor a longtime friend and colleague. The role of executive director is an unusual one. Danny knows. From the top down, you are responsible for everything that occurs at the temple, from the waxing of the floors to the quality of the sound system, to making sure that all the event needs are taken care of properly to ensure their success, and of course, the finances. And from the bottom up, being available to every congregant who needs to ask a question, to a congregant that needs to vent, to the congregant who needs to talk about finances. And additionally, as executive director, you have to be available to the clergy, professional staff, to the administrative staff, the congregants, the lay leadership. It's a really full-time job. It's the greatest. But you're part of a team and responsible for the cohesion that brings the team's different functions and responsibilities to a smooth and beloved leadership model for the temple. You are always part of a team. And all the while, you're maintaining your own integrity and leadership. Danny has been through tough times. He has worked with a team, and he has worked so hard. He's guided us through a pandemic that threatened everything in our lives, from personal relationships to financial concerns, to staff changes, to making adjustments for people who are even afraid to leave their homes. Your compassion, your integrity, your intelligence, and your drive make you an outstanding executive director. Danny demonstrates an instinctive sense of what's right and how to maintain a level playing field that helps keep all of us balanced. And although that's not enough, Danny's other hat is as a vice president of professional development on the board of NADA. That's the professional organization, the National Association of Temple Administrators. It's really impressive to recognize that as valuable as Danny is to us, he's also valuable to his professional organization. And believe me, it is time-consuming. It's like a second job. At NADA's annual convention in the fall, Danny will be honored for his 10 years of service and will be awarded a 10-year pin. But because he's such a good friend and because I didn't ask anybody, I'm going to pin him. Ooh, breaking rules. With my 10-year pin. When I became a 10-year member, I got this pin, and I want to give it to Danny. Congratulations.
Thank you.
This is for you. I don't know if I can do this.
So, Scott. So we have, again, a gift, and yes. And if you'll go ahead and open it.
Phil knows me well.
Fern and I didn't coordinate this. We didn't coordinate this, but it speaks to the role that you play in helping people in such significant ways. And this piece contains the quotation that states, "Anyone who sustains one soul is as if they sustained an entire world." And we know that you continue to sustain our world. So thank you so much, Danny. Thank you. And Phyllis was responsible for wrapping that as well.
We are so fortunate. We now have the opportunity to recognize the Volunteer of the Year. And I'd like to invite Karen Brown to please come up to the bima. I'll say 2 words. Before I turn it over to Rabbi Cohen, Karen is an incredible member of the Board of Directors and the Executive Committee, and has been absolutely foundational in all of our inclusion committee efforts in the temple. But that is really not why you're being recognized. It's because of the fact that you are always here with any ask, any task, no matter how big or how small. Karen is here and puts in the time and makes those connections. And I can't think of anyone better to be recognized this year. And congratulations. I'm going to let Rabbi Cohen give the rest of the presentation.
So, I'm going to do it this way. When Bob Goldberg, of blessed memory, of past president of the congregation, one of the early presidents of the congregation, turned 100 years old, we were trying to figure out how do we honor someone not only achieving 100 years, but somebody who cared so very, very deeply about the congregation and who was a friend and mentor to so many, myself included. I remember very early on, at the first weeks that I was here as rabbi of the congregation, that Bob Goldberg and Ed Cadden, two past presidents of the congregation, sat me down and told me about Temple Jeremiah and the things that I should do and the things that I should not do. And it was wonderful. It was done with incredible love and care, and it wasn't just a one-time event. Bob lived for this congregation, and it was a fitting way to create this award to honor people who are equally committed to the congregation, who volunteered time and talent, time which you have given so generously, talent which you have in abundance. And thinking of all the things that you do, from volunteering in our office to literally cataloging the library in my study. It's just unbelievable. And continuing to do the work, the art room, and it is amazing, and we are so very, very grateful for everything that you do, and for being an advocate as in your role with the Inclusion Committee, being an advocate for everyone, and even on Friday evening, being an advocate for the choir. And we just are so grateful for everything that you do. And so it is with great pleasure that we honor you with the Robert H. Goldberg Award for service to the Temple Jeremiah community in honor of your dedication and contributions to Temple Jeremiah. Karen, thank you so much.
Our last presentation this evening is for the future. And I'd like to invite Rabbi Heaps to the bima to make these presentations.
I have the honor of awarding the Toddy Gray and Diane Mary Katz Scholarship to two of our wonderful teenagers, graduating seniors who have dedicated so much of their time, so much of who they are to this community, to their Jewish future, to investing themselves in everything that these two wonderful individuals embodied. And so before I tell you, in case you can't tell by the teenagers in the room, there's only two seniors in the room right now, a little bit about Toddy Gray and Diane Mary Katz. Toddy Gray was born in 1913 and was the very first woman in her family very first member of her family to attend college. She graduated from Northwestern, and there she met her husband, Milton Gray. Toddy was a warm and loving person. She built her family. She had children and grandchildren and so many friends, and she would be the first one to drop everything to help out if they ever needed. She always made time for those whom she loved, and she set aside special time for her grandchildren. Her caring nature, her sense of humor, her integrity made her indeed a person worth remembering and worth honoring every single year. And Diane Mary Katz was only 32 years old when she passed away. She was the daughter of Bobby and Paul Katz, the sister of Larry and Stephen. She was smart and sensitive and loving to her family and her cousins who truly adored her. She was confirmed here at Temple Jeremiah. She graduated from Glenbrook South and attended Wesleyan University. And she spent time working in New York before returning to Chicago and graduating also from Northwestern University, this time law school, where she was a great student. Diane loved to travel the world and would think nothing of dropping everything to drive cross-country all by herself, and even went to Vietnam all on her own. She had a great sense of adventure, as well as being an ethical and caring person. And this scholarship was set up by Jim Gray and Bobby Katz so that their loved ones, Diane Mary Katz and Toddy Gray, would be honored and would always have a legacy in this next generation. So it is my honor to award this scholarship both to Ava Weiner and to Tamara Katz, and I invite you guys to come forward. One for you and one for you. Each of you have been madrichot here in our J-Quest program. You have attended Jewish camp, both day camp and sleepaway camp. You've been such parts of your high school communities. You've learned with us, you've worked with us, and you are the people that we're so proud to be able to call our Jeremiah legacy. As you go on to Tufts and to Denver, we encourage Vanderbilt. Like last week we talked about this. Great, okay. To Vanderbilt and to Denver, every time you're back home, come back here because we get to be your home. And I always like a good excuse to hear your adventures, to have a little bit of caffeine together, and to just always know that this is your home too. So Mazel Tov, congratulations. Enjoy every single adventure you have next, and come back and tell us about them. Mazel Tov.
Thank you. Mazel Tov to you both. That is wonderful. So I believe that brings a close to all of the business and festivities of the evening. So can I hear a motion to adjourn the annual meeting? We are adjourned.